TGC Requiem back with Modern Sultai Control. This is actually another match from the competitive league. So another one of these opponents that had 5 undefeated trophies in the competitive league, so looking like a tough opponent. We are on the play. Fortunately, this is just not good enough. Maybe with a Serum Visions, and even then I doubt it because of the double Tassiger. So I'm pretty sure we're going to mulligan here. This one's okay. We get to adjust our top card and then determine if we want to crack the Polluted Delta on turn 1 or not. Spell Snare, go for the Throat, Liliana, and Tassiger. Good mix. I think we're good here. Opponent keeps 7. Probably put Thought Scour to the bottom there. We actually left it on top, but that's just because we plan to crack our fetch anyway. The only way we weren't cracking our fetch turn 1 was if we had a land on top. So Watery Grave, Serum Visions, get a second land. Probably putting the Cryptic Command to the bottom here and Counter Squall on top. Opponent opens with a Bloodstained Mire, Stomping Ground, Goblin Guide. So we're probably playing Burning here in this matchup. Hopefully we get, well, we know we have Counter Squall, so play our second land. Hoping to make use of a Spell Snare here so that we can crack Verdant Catacombs for a tapped Breeding Pool. Opponent plays a second Goblin Guide. Goes to attacks. First Goblin Guide gets us a Breeding Pool. Second Goblin Guide gets us an Overgrown Tomb. So those are great, though they are both shock lands. But that allows us to consider fetching for a basic with Verdant Catacombs. Though I think I do actually. This is still before damage. Yep, so we get a forest. Looking back, Cryptic Command might be, we're kind of pinching ourselves out of Cryptic Command mana. We also are forcing ourselves to play a shock to get Counter Squall up. So doing that to save 2 life and probably cost us that much, at least in the end here. Puts us down to 12. The opponent's still got 5 cards in hand. Plays in the Coddle. Not the greatest situation. So we can Serum Visions here. But if we Serum Visions, we have to play Breeding Pool to get Spell Snare up. We could play Overgrown Tomb and try and get Liliana on board. Hopefully slow our opponent down. Most likely what we're going to do here is just play a tap land and stick a Tassiger, I think. We actually keep it, I guess, so that's actually not a bad point as I rewatch this. The opponent has 4 cards in hand, almost certainly going to have a 2 CMC play next turn. When you think about playing the shock upright, you're going to take 2 life, but if you're able to Spell Snare a Boros Charm, you're spending 2 life to stop a 4 pain spell, 4 damage spell, which saves you 2 life. So I think we're good there. We're going to probably just jam Tassiger then and leave up the Spell Snare. Opponent still has a lot of cards in hand. Here he goes for the Boros Charm. So again, just kind of like why we left Breeding Pool up. This is why you think through your plays before you make them. So as I rewatch the replays, I'm just kind of, in some regards, almost thinking I might be on autopilot of sorts. So Breeding Pool gets us a Fatal Push, that's good. Snapcaster is good. Delta could be good. We really need that 3rd blue source at some point. But we do put the breeding pool or the polluted delta on the bottom, keep Snapcaster on top, and part of the reason for that, again, right now we don't have Cryptic in hand, and we're really going to have to count on kind of what we have to finish our opponent out. He's got 13 life and 2 cards in hand, so if we can handle his board, Tassiger may be able to close for us. We do have Counter Squall, though we can't hold it up without playing an Overgrown Tomb, and I probably make this mistake here. I probably end up dropping the Overgrown Tomb in tapped for the exact same reason I was thinking before. Whereas if I kept it upright, Counter Squall is going to potentially protect us. By paying 2, we may protect ourselves, save 1 life or whatever. So the opponent had suspended a Rift Bolt the previous turn. This comes in. So this is a situation where we could potentially now Counter Squall and save ourselves 1 life. Though I would still be more concerned about a 2 CMC spell. Now he Lava Spikes us. We probably would have countered that, which would have left us at 7. And now he goes to Boros Charm. Doesn't even have to attack. And again here, we counter that. We're at 4 life. He's at 11. We have a Fatal Push. Next turn we play Liliana to stop his creatures from being able to attack back. And having Serum Visions. So basically just kind of played ourselves a little bit out of this game. Opponent, however, played quite well. Set himself up for what he needed to do, had the right cards to do it. So we are down 0-1 in this. Come back here with the second game. So if we look at the sideboard against Burn, I pulled a Cryptic command out. I pulled a Serum Visions out. Sometimes I feel like against super fast decks, you don't really have the time to filter. You just got to hope you draw the right cards, and so the right mix. And so I pulled a Serum Visions. I pulled a couple Go for the Throat. I pulled out Liliana the Last Hope. She's not really great, so we pulled one of those out. So this would mean we definitely brought in Dispels and Negates. We pulled out Maelstrom Pulse. So it looks like we pulled out 5, 6 cards, which means we would have brought in the Dispels, the Negates, and the Collective Brutalities. Collective Brutality, an excellent card against Burn. So all right. So this is an interesting hand. I feel like it's keepable. However, I will say not having access to green mana is a little scary. Usually the recipe for beating Burn is sticking like a turn 2 Tarmogoyf and then hoping that slows their attackers down enough for you to stabilize the board enough to close out on them while they're doing a lot of damage to themselves. That said, we have Dispel, a couple Spell Snare, Snapcaster to recur one of those, presumably if we draw our 3rd land. So, we get a green source, we're going to have access to Abrupt Decay. This seems like a hand that you're not going to throw away. Since we don't have any way to interact with our opponent's creature on turn 1, there's no point in taking the 2 damage. If he throws down a haste creature and we try to bluff a Fatal Push, he could just throw the creature down anyway, because that's probably what they're going to do. And when he does throw the creature down, all of a sudden you're looking at 4 damage instead of 2. So Opponent opens on a Verdant Catacombs. Interesting to see a Verdant Catacombs. You don't normally see Verdant Catacombs as a land in as one of the fetch lands in Burn, but regardless, he goes and gets a Wild Nacatl. Draw another Watery Grave, not the greatest. Here, I think instead of playing the Drowned Catacomb, well, I guess either play is fine. If you play the Drowned Catacomb, you have the ability to hold Spell Snare and Dispel. You could play the Watery Grave tapped, hoping that he goes for a 2 CMC play. I mean, it's really what you kind of need. Opponent attacks for 3. We don't have any creature removal. And then he goes for Eidolon. Yeah, but we do have a Spell Snare for that. And that was kind of why it might have been smarter to play the Watery Grave there. So if he doesn't play a 2 CMC spell, he plays like creature, you can't do anything anyway. If he plays creature and a burn spell, then Dispel is the only card that's going to do anything, and that's if he plays an instant. So definitely would have been smarter to play the Watery Grave there instead of the Drowned Catacomb. Here we're able to go for Verdant Catacombs. Probably planning to get a Forest so that we can Abrupt Decay the Nacatl while holding up Spell Snare in case he were to want a Boros Charm to protect it. Opponent goes for Monastery Swiftspear, and Monastery Swiftspear, and Wild Nacatl. Yuck. So we do not have a hand to compete with this. So we end up just Abrupt Decaying one of the Nacatls, taking 2. But this allows us to potentially snap Abrupt Decay the other Nacatl during combat. Might actually be better to do it now to protect the creatures and hold up the Snapcaster for blocks. So here we're going to get Snapcaster in, targeting Abrupt Decay. I'm going to get that Nacatl. He has a path which is going to pump his Swift Spears. We're not going to get to chump with the Snapcaster as planned, but we do get another land. And then blow up the Nacatl, take 4, puts us down to 10. A couple burn spells, really looking for a stabilizing source right here. And he gets an Eidolon down underneath our Spell Snare. We draw Tassiger, so needed a stabilizing source, and we got one. And on top of it, we can cast it without triggering Eidolon. Another situation where we could have spent 2 mana to keep our Spell Snare and Dispel up. And then this is where we see why our opponent probably had the Verdant Catacombs. He just fetched for a Dryad Arbor, and that's probably why he's running extra green sources. Very interesting, assuming that's unexpected and you maybe get some free wins off of fetching for Dryad Arbor end step. Opponent goes for Monastery Swiftspear, nothing we would have been able to do against that. He actually passes a turn there. Just draw Misty Rainforest, doesn't really do us any good. We're actually good to just flip Tassiger right now, because if he draws us some sort of good spell, we could still keep the mana open for it. Whereas we'll still have 2 mana open for Dispel and Spell Snare anyway. I think I end up keeping, this is probably a mistake, so I guess we're only going to need one of the 2 spells, right? We're either going to need a spell or a Spell Snare. Our opponent's only going to draw 1 card, so that makes sense. So we're We're doing this in case we draw an Abrupt Decay. Unfortunately, we flip 2 lands in the graveyard, so we don't get anything out of it. Opponent goes to combat, and now he attacks with everything, which is a bad sign. He's presenting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 damage. Any spell triggers the Swift Spears, which is up to 9 damage. We can at best block 2, so 7. So really any 3 damage spell like a Lightning Bolt or Lava Spike, granted it would have to be instant speed based on the fact that he's already gone to attacks. So we're going to block the Eidolon because it presents us a problem. He goes for the Boros Charm here. We can actually counter the Boros Charm. However, countering the Boros Charm is going to cost us 2 life on the Eidolon. Still saves us 2. I think this is going to end up leaving us down to 1 life when it's all said and done. And short of drawing a Flaying Tendrils, which we did not have in the sideboard at this point, we're just dead. There's really nothing we have in our deck that can do anything here. I suppose Cryptic Command could be a draw, and so I believe I do fire off the Thought Scour looking for Cryptic Command. And when we don't hit the Cryptic Command, it's game over. I play the Tarmogoyf out, and I make my opponent go for combat, making him think maybe we have a couple removal spells, which he's not buying, and he attacks in, and that's damage, and we lose. So 0-2 to burn. I will say I think the matchup's a lot better than this. I think the hand that I kept is probably a bad keep looking back, especially considering we had seen Nakatl in the first game. I think you almost have to have either removal and counter magic in your opening hand, excuse me, or you need to have like a Tarmogoyf for Tasigur, the ability to potentially get it turn 2. I don't know. The way to beat him, the formula to beat Burn, is to neutralize their early threat, put down a blocker that is difficult to get through, and then you use your counter magic backup while you essentially either race them with Tarmogoyf or just stabilize the board and then close the game out. So I do think this matchup's better than what we see here. I do think I'm like 2-1 against the matchup, and it's possible though that again I definitely didn't have the best hands in either of these games. Mulligan to 6-1 with a 1-lander where we had to open up with Serum Visions to try and get a second land. This game keeping counter magic heavy hand and the opponent essentially being heavy on creatures. These things happen. But I think I'm like 2-1 in the matchup, and it's other than this particular match that I'm displaying here, it's felt better than this. So I would think at least we're looking at an even matchup, maybe slightly favored. So anywho, this is Sultai Control versus Burn.